Alright traders, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. Again, as I always start these videos, as always, I'm filming this November 1st. October is over. Happy Halloween for anyone who dressed up and, had a good time last night. I was a banana, so if you cared to know. Not that it's any bit relevant to this video, but yeah. New second best month. If you watched the September recap, this beat my previous second best month, and then we came into October crushing that as well. But again, doesn't beat November 2024 at 838. We came in just over 600 at $637,000 in the month. Very happy with this month. There are a few frustrations, which we will talk about throughout the video. But in general and in total, I mean, just crushed it. Very happy with it in general. Doing a ton of opportunity on the swing side and on the day trading side. It ended up being pretty 50-50, where about half of the profits were from swing trades, half of the profits were from, I guess, non-swing trades. There are still some stocks I swung, but they weren't the typical Kuomagi swing style. So it's like when I say swing trades, I'm referring to Kuomagi. When I swing something that's not Kuomagi, I just consider it on the day trading side, even though it's not a day trade, right? But half and half between what I do and what I'm newly doing, which is great. Win rate on the lower end. In previous months, I would be very annoyed to have a win rate under 50. Not that it really means whether I'm profitable or not, but I've always been the trader to like to win more than a coin flip, right? Regardless of my risk reward, I've just always liked to be a higher win rate trader. Didn't even notice. Didn't even care, which was really good to see. It lets me know I'm getting maybe more comfortable with losing more, because that's just naturally what's going to happen with swing trading. And the risk reward is great, right? Again, most months, not to go too far deep, but like most months you'll find like I'm barely 2-1, maybe even a little bit under 2-1. Some months even 1-1. And you might wonder like, how on earth is he profitable? Over time, I've realized like average win and average loss doesn't necessarily give you the best representation of risk reward, because you could have a ton of small losers or small winners that don't actually lead to any one trade that worked or didn't work. But if you take in all the ones that were full losses and all the ones that were like truly full wins, that's really a better gauge of risk reward. I don't know if maybe finding the mean or the mode is a better way to do it, but I've been doing average this long, so we're just going to stick with it. But to have the average risk reward be 3-1 is pretty damn good. I'm pretty stoked about that, which is very cool to see. So without further ado, let's just jump in the trades. I wouldn't say disclaimer, but it's going to be a little bit different in terms of the flow. When I was reviewing, the first half is great. Don't get me wrong. Very few trades that are memorable and actually contributed to this. I don't know the exact number of trades, but I took a lot of trades this month. Probably 80% of them came in this second half. And the most notable and like really the biggest contributors, I would say, to just this bottom line came in the second half. So very few will go over in the first, but there's going to be a ton that I might even have to like speed run through just to give you a gist of how this month went down, because there's a lot. I have to check. It might be my most traded month. I have to triple check that, but I definitely traded over 100 trades, which is not common. I'm usually in the 50 to 70 range. So anyways, without further ado, let's jump into the first one. Tesla, TSLL was my preferred choice or vehicle, but obviously TSLL is the 2x leverage ETF of Tesla. And so I was watching this breakout. If we kind of, you can clearly see where my lines are drawn here. I was watching, this move. And we talked about it a bit in August and maybe even a bit in September, how it always made a new higher high, but just failed. New higher high, failed. But while it failed, it also then kept succeeding in this kind of trend of making a higher low every single time, right? And so eventually I knew, if this keeps trying, eventually one of these tries is not going to be a fake out and is actually going to bring in some real big momentum. And so I forget which specific day I bought it. It was either the 8th of September or the 10th of September, but I definitely bought the high of one of these days. The cool part is that it really based well over these 4 days. So instead of coming back down to this lower trend, right, instead of kind of coming back, if it was going to keep repeating itself, it would have dropped down to like, 336, 337. but it stayed strong in the 340s, and I think that was the first tell. So then when it kind of went, it was off to the races. And so just look at the actual trades there, right? On the 10th is where I bought. So literally, I mean, it's just funny. I literally bought the top of that day. Thankfully, it just didn't stop me out at the lows, near the support of low 13 to 13, I think it was. And then again, back to the daily chart. We'll pull up TSLL to give you guys the actual look of it. Next day goes over 14, and then it's off, right? I ended up trimming some. I believe it was either, I have the trades. We'll look at it. No, that's not that. That's not Hive. We'll go over Hive later. TSLL, so you got that out of the way. So yeah, sold some at 17-ish, trimmed some there. And then I think overnight news came out that Elon bought $1 billion worth of shares. And so then that gapped this up even more. So I thought to myself, okay, this is a huge gap up. Let's sell a little bit more, trim a little bit more. So trim some in the mid 19s. And then the rest was just trailing. And I trailed it on the 10 SMA. It did close below the 10 SMA on the 25th. At least TSLL did, but Tesla did not. And so I'm going to stick to the underlying asset that I'm actually trading, which is Tesla. And so that just hold barely the 10. So it let me hold for another week or so. Unfortunately, after moving higher, it then just crapped itself pretty hard and then ended up selling roughly the same price, not too big of a difference, on the 3rd of October. So locked in 76K on that swing. So pretty freaking solid. Again, I would not have locked in as much if I took Tesla, but taking TSLL, gives me a better percent on my money there. And it's still holding up. We'll see what happens. If you go back to Tesla, I keep going back and forth here, but Tesla's pushing, getting very close to, all-time highs here. And so any big push up from the markets, including Tesla, this looks pretty damn good. So we'll find. I wouldn't shock me if I end up being in TSLL again in the near future. We'll see. But anyway, that's that one. Another one, and again, I want to make sure I keep on top of all the trades here. So yeah, that's selling, and then here's me selling below the 10 into the close. So gave a little bit back, but it is what it is. Made some good money. So next one is Buru. Buru is the best day trade to start the month. Very crappy ticker. Very crappy history. If you go just in the daily chart, right, it was never at 400. They've done reverse splits, and they keep just fading. Every pop, every run is just met with disappointment, which is most small cap tickers, right? But like this one's just, has a little bit more icing on the cake in terms of how ugly it gets sometimes. And so when we were running from 15 cents to now 70, 80 cents, I thought to myself, this is going to be, as long as I time it correctly, this should offer a really great backside move. And so the idea was going into, what was this, the 8th of October, it's gapping up pretty damn big. To the point where, again, if you followed enough of my videos or watched enough of them, when something gaps up a little too much, especially after already an extended run, that to me is a sign of exhaustion, like an exhaustion gap. And so I'm usually more times than not bearish out of that open. And so that is exactly what I was for Buru. Going into the actual trades, let me actually make this bigger so you can see this, right? So going in, I immediately get short at the open. That ends up being wrong. So I downsize here. You can barely see that green candle. But then I cut some more again. And I think that was again the pre-market highs. If we go actually into the trades, right? If we can go into we'll do last month. Get to that top day intraday action. If we'll load here, come on. Maybe not. But if, wait, there we go. A little slow today. Yeah, right. That pre-market high was like 75, 76-ish. So I cut the rest there. And as it was spiking, it was kind of, I don't want to call it parabolic, but it was spiking pretty strongly to the point now I was thinking $1 was that next level in mind. And then it immediately failed. Like I thought that literally at the high. And so when it failed, I then questioned myself, okay, if it can't get to $1, we just had a huge move from 65 practically to 85. Again, we're up from 15 cents. how much more does this truly have in it? And again, that's a little bit of a slippery slope because again, someone could have easily thought that yesterday, when this thing was at, 40s, like it's gone from 15 cents to 40 cents. Like how much more can it have? So a ticker can always have more, but at some point, the top is in, right? And so trying to time that is difficult, but that's kind of where my head entered, where it's like, if we're blowing off out the open already, and then we can't get to $1, or I can at least use $1 as a resistance in worst case scenario. I'm like, can we actually go higher? Or are we going to roll over? Are we going to have some kind of, failed move? So that's when it gets me to actually reshort this. I start in on, the first bounce. And then as it's looking to kind of break down, it never really made a new lower low until the actual crack, but I started short selling some more thinking it was going to happen. That's when you see, this extra candle right here. But it wasn't until we finally broke it that I added final size, got a good crack to new low day. Didn't cover any though. I was pretty convicted we would see sub 60 cents. And so then I waited for one more pull and got that pull. And so then I covered it all, at like between 60, 59. I think I got some more at 56-ish. Again, didn't get the bottom, but again, I don't really care about getting to the bottom. I just want to get into that lay of weakness. So that was really cool. And then the reason why you might ask, it's like, well, Kyle, why are you covering? Like, again, you've been saying this is up from 15 cents. Why are we covering at, 55? Well, again, something to keep in note is that the previous close was at like 45. So there's a world that could have sold off to previous close. There's a world that could have gone below previous close. But a lot of times on these bigger gap up plays, red-green can be a form of support, not a trigger for lower. Again, that's not a foolproof statement. Like we'll see later in this video, there's examples where it doesn't hold red-green and actually dies lower and later in the day. But this one didn't even get close to it. And so I kind of anticipated that. Again, going from 70 open down to 45 would be a pretty large sell-off to not have a bounce. So I was already thinking, hey, in the 50s, let's not be greedy. Let's just take it off there. And if there is a bounce, then to get short. And so I'm super happy with that idea because then later in the day, here we are bouncing back to 70 cents and I want to get reshort. So starting in some at like 66, 67, shorting some more at like 71, adding some more when it looks like this bounce is finally over at the top of 75. And then I wanted to swing it overnight because again, if we're looking at the daily chart, if we go back to it, again, this is when I'm now thinking, hey, we are still up from 15 cents. And if this can close a red candle, but a green day, it's not going to be a red day. It would have to go below 45 or the 40s for that. But if we close below the open and we are fading in after hours, that was kind of enough of a green light for me to want to swing it and hold overnight. I've got profits locked in, etc. And so by the time it closed, then after hours, which I don't have, but if we want to, let's see if we waste our time going back into the intraday, we got to go month. Right. By after hours, it was already now below, was it below 60? It definitely was below the mid 60s, which is why then gave me the full, not heads up, but green light, like I've been saying, to hold it overnight. The after hours close was 61. And so the next day gaps down even lower to 55, gives you that huge washout to 45. And then that is when I'm covering the rest of that. If we get rid of this, get Buru out. There we go. All right, so I'm covering some low 50s and then getting the rest sub 50 in the mid 40s. And then that was that. So between both trades, the morning and then the swing overnight short, total between the two was 53K. So really good start from a first red day perspective. So super happy with that. And again, I think that was the 9th, I think, somewhere in there. And I lost somewhere on the 9th as well, but I don't really, nothing meaningful. But one loser in this month, and actually this might have been it, was Open. Open was a swing trade, and I guess it's still a swing trade I'm keeping my eye on. Lost 12K attempting to buy this here. I think it was on, early October. This looked really good here. So like when we were basing and holding these, right around $8, I was both bearish and bullish. I thought to myself, if this can break below, the high 7s, I imagine a pull to 7 is pretty doable. But if we come back over this level, they call these mid 8s, then we might want to try to push 10, 11, and then have another big leg up. And so I remember buying it one of these days. Again, this is why I screenshot, because you take too many trades, you completely forget what you're doing half the time. Or not December, October 6th. Bought it over this high. That was a good buy. I was really happy with that because then a ton of volume comes in, huge spike already immediately into the mid nines, high nines. And so that was obviously this day, right? Gets it going. It looks really good by the close. I mean, I know me and anyone who was long was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, let's do this all over again, right? Let's get another big move out of this. Wick down, came back up, still looks strong. Then it gets weak, and then it collapses even more. So by that point, that's when I cut it. I lost 12K there. Again, going into the trades, right? Just couldn't do it. Ended up stopping out at $8 or so there. Ended up going much lower, and then even looking at it now, right? We have only faded more, and yeah, we bounced back, and we are kind of surfing and supporting this 50-day. Unfortunately, earnings is like right around the corner, so we'll see what happens. I would love for it to go higher, obviously, but there's no way I can be speculative going into earnings without being up on the ticker, and I'm just not up on the ticker. I don't have a position on the ticker. So, yeah, that was a loss there that, is average, was an average loser for the swing trades, but definitely gave some profits back, obviously. Okay. Like I said, those were the most memorable trades from the first half. This second half is going to be jam-packed. So let's jump right in. UAMY, whatever you want to say, UAMY. This was one of the, mineral mining materials companies in the sector that ran huge. There was UAMY, there was USAR, there was, ABAT, there was CMBL. Like, there was a massive group of these that just went on a massive run. And this was not a swing trade for me. I actually regret not buying this one because I was watching it. I just never got around to buying it. I remember specifically watching it, and it's crazy to say this because it's literally double. I remember first watching this in the fours, but around these earnings, I didn't like, again, buying our earnings. Turns out that done nothing to the stock price, and then just started grinding up. Would have gotten stopped out in here, but then certainly, and because I didn't buy it here, I thought, I don't really want to rebuy it at 5. Big mistake, because that would have led you to then this move from 5 all the way up to as high as almost $20. I mean, we're talking 4x in almost a month, like 3 weeks. Freaking incredible. So big regrets not doing that and buying that. But once we were going parabolic, the swing trading's missed, but now the day trading for a first red day short was in the cards. And unfortunately, I screwed this one up. I screwed this one up big time. This top day was the day I wanted to get short. But again, if you were watching or remember this top day, the whole sector flushed immediately out the open. So unless you were like super convicted for some reason that the sector was just going to die with zero bouncing, it's kind of difficult, and I'm not really sure how you would have gotten size here, unfortunately. And so that was me, right? I mean, literally, it's gapping up, looks strong, and yeah, you could argue it was an exhaustion gap. I mean, it's kind of similar to Buru. You can argue, hey, this gap up was pretty darn big, but it's also had some pretty big gap ups, especially the day prior, just as big. So I didn't have enough conviction that this was just going to collapse, for almost $4 a share right out the open. And so that really threw me off guard, and ultimately was the reason I screwed this up, because it did that, then I thought to myself, okay, let me get short a bounce, and then it's going to roll over again. Not the right thinking. So here's that trade, right? I don't get any size until, high 17, so I'm already missing like $2 a share. Then I'm adding more on red green, which I was already risky about, because again, in my head I'm thinking the same concepts as Buru of like, does this actually bounce at red green? Like, I really don't like it if this ends up bouncing and I have an average like near the lows at this point. And so it pulls. I cover some because the panic stalls out. I add again, thinking it's going to go even lower. That was a big mistake, so covered that immediately. Then reshorted some, and then again, just no. It's like all the weakness was here, and there was nothing left for the rest of the day. And so I ended up stopping out over the highs. So I ended up giving back all of this profit from the short and then taking a full-size loss on this reshort. So pretty frustrating. But again, I'm not the guy to just blindly get short out the open and catch this $4 move. I would have needed like maybe a balance attempt here, and then if it goes lower, then I could just add more size because I feel a little bit comfortable of a risk level or a risk reward area, or an idea that it's weaker. Like, give me a little bit more time to react, like a minute, not just seconds. So yeah, frustrating. Now, the bigger fumble, in my opinion, and yes and no, again, I'm speaking in hindsight, is again, looking at something like Buru that we just looked at, like, hey, had a red day, or had a red candle, still a green day, huge parabolic move. You could justify an overnight hold on the short side. The reason why I didn't, though, is because, again, if you were watching this sector on the run-up, I mean, it wasn't just at every day was a gap up, but like some stocks that were literally looked weak still gapped up the next day. Like USAR being one of them. We'll talk about this in a second here. Like, it doesn't matter if it was a huge wick to the upside. It doesn't matter if it was a red day. We found a way to gap up every single day. And so that kept popping up in my mind of like, oh man, I mean, yes, it fits this quote unquote pattern that I'm referring to with Buru and UAMI, where it's like, yeah, if you want to guess a top and take a short overnight and want to take that extra risk, technically it fits that look. But I just couldn't do it because I'm like, man, if this gaps up again with the sector, like I'm going to be really upset. Now, in hindsight, that's not what happened. And so doing that, or at least getting short out the open, because again, it's not like you have to be short overnight. In fact, most people probably shouldn't. I feel like I'm kind of messed up in the head sometimes for doing it because it's only gotten more risky as time has gone on. But, going into the intraday, it's like, okay, don't short overnight. Be a protective, safe trader. What's stopping you from shorting the spike into the 16s? I should have easily been able to do that. Could have risked, 17s or 18. Yeah, risk would have been a little bit wider, but again, you get a pull down to 13, the risk reward was absolutely worth it. Now, granted, did we know it was going to go 13? No, but I would have thought it was going to go at least sub 15 when you look at a daily chart like this. And so it doesn't shock me that it went to 14s. Again, even then, it goes to 12, and now we're at 8. Like, we're just so overbought up here, and I made nothing on the short side. So, sucks, but it is what it is. Now, in terms of some swing losses, God, these two just bug the crap out of me. ACHR, remember buying it on this breakout, right? Came back over the mid-13s and like 14 area, stuffed me intraday, lost there. Then it spiked again. So I'm like, okay, let's give it another try, and even a bigger stuff. So took 2 full-size losers on both these days. You probably can find them. Let's get rid of these. ACHR, right? This is one of them, right? Bought some more, realized I was undersized, bought some more there, stopped out under low a day. So that was a good, 12K loser. Joby we'll talk about in a second. ACHR the next day, this is the next day because it got clobbered even more. Bought it again around 14, stopped out low a day. Thankfully stopped out low a day because again, I mean, both days it got pretty ugly. And even now it is, it's holding up, but it is well off those highs. So kind of annoying to lose 20K plus, over those 2 days, but there's more. Again, Joby, like I just mentioned, was the same idea. I think both of these are like in the LiDAR sector, like technology-wise. So they don't move together, but they were having the same look. And so again, Joby, this was not the all-time highs of like 19 or 21, but I couldn't help but notice like there's this line in the sand in like the mid-18s, 19 area. Like I still have an alert set there because it topped here, topped there, and then actually gapped over and still failed. So like this to me was a big level. And even this day, right, broke over it, held the next day, but then immediately gaps below it. So this level is not like a good total breakout price, but it's a level I like to watch and want to keep an eye on. And so both these days, I'm like trying to buy it. The same 2 days as ACHR, I'm trying to buy it over this wick and then try it again over this wick. And again, gets absolutely crushed the second day. So stopping at low a day was absolutely the move. You see it here. Joby, right? Buying, stopping out, and then Joby, buying again, stopping out again. Saving myself some losses, but that's why we stick to our risk management and risk levels. But yeah, that resulted, I think, was all on 14th and 15th, or the 15th and 16th. Certainly the 15th. Like the 15th, there was no recovering from avoiding a red day like this because it just was loss after loss. Couldn't get anything going. But then the rest of the week here was some pretty big swing winners, quite a few of them, and actually a day trade. So first one was Hive, HIVE. This was part of another super hot sector of the data center, AI data center plays. First, but I mean, I think I talked about it. I don't know if I did mention in September or not, but I definitely bought it on this day in the 24th of September over this, what I thought was this little trend line I drew. Unfortunately, the very next day the market was super weak. I remember the NASDAQ gapping down, and so did HIVE, and stopped out that day. So that sucks. But again, I still thought to myself, okay, if the market wasn't weak, I still think this had some continuation in it. So when it came back over the trend line again, I then bought it again on September 30th. And boy, was that right. I mean, green days every single day, straight to highs. Just really, really, really awesome move. And again, the rest of the data center went hot, which we'll talk about in a second too. But yeah, just really good move. Again, looking at the trades. Right, Hive, this was that buy. Originally doesn't look too great, kind of closes relatively down in the position. But then as as the day goes on, it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. End up trimming some at 440. Really, really regret this trim, only because, not that I don't regret trimming, but obviously, you can see me trimming at 440, is locking in a profit, which is great. But one more day, my God. I mean, you get I'm not going to say I'm going to sell here at 550, but it's always going to be frustrating as a swing trader for me to trim and then see the next day just rocket, right? So yeah, I mean, in a real world, or in a more hindsight world, again, if I didn't trim at all, which I would never do, but not trimming at all obviously would have made me much more money. And that's the case for most swings that work, but the ones that don't, you're glad you trimmed because it saves you from a full-size loser. So it's a double-edged sword. You got to deal with it. So trim some there, and then I think I risked it all on the 10, which again, partly is tough. And that was a big mental, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the video, but that was a big tough part about the swings of this month, because I was up so much, guys. Like when things were really working, and again, going into late September, early October, I mean, every swing it's like I couldn't lose. And that's not normal, right? This was, I always thought I was taking crazy pills. Like I was up so much on so many of my swings, which is crazy to say, because you're probably looking at my month like, holy crap, Kyle, you locked in, at least 300 grand plus swings. Like how much were you finally up? I mean, if these swings kept going, obviously I was never going to lock it in because all of these rolled over eventually. But I was pushing getting close to 7 figures unrealized. So it's quite mentally frustrating to watch them go, because I give back so much money. But again, that's the system. Like I just don't know how high they're going to go, and you have to let them. You have to find out. Because if I'm not willing to find out, I probably would have sold all these swings we're about to go over way too early. So it's again a double-edged sword where it's like I'm willing to watch how high they can go, but I'm never going to capture how high they can go, and I'm always going to give back profits on the backside. It just depends on how frustrating of the backside it is, given how much they actually sell off a lot. And so for Hive here, was one of those ones that not too badly, but to really get crushed all in one candle, you give a lot back, versus if this could have stayed strong for a little bit longer and then the 10 catch up even more, you arguably, that trailing stop helps you save some money, but that just wasn't the case here. But did sell it all under the 10, didn't care to risk the 20 in this case, even though you could argue you should. But again, giving so much back, I was like, oh man, the 20 is all the way down at 5. Like, do I really want to do that? And the answer was no. No, I did not. So sold that there. Now, more swings. We'll finish the swings and then we'll go into the day trade, but it's not necessarily in chronological order. What was it? AMPX. Another one, which I actually tweeted about on Friday, because I did take an entry on this Friday, over like the low 13s, 1330, 1340, kind of breaking this trend again. Only reason because my read on this has been really, really freaking good on this one particular. And the buy here was actually on, what day was it? Was it this day? It might have been the 9th. Let's look at I keep guessing. Let me just look at it. That's USAR, AMPX. Is this it? We're going to go over UGL in a second. Yeah, AMPX. So I'm pretty sure this was on the 10th of September. I'm almost positive I actually streamed this live on the Clover YouTube channel. Yeah, that's a Wednesday. So I remember actually buying this live, only to then get stuffed immediately stuffed. Like I lost like 7-8K. I was okay, whatever. And then it fades. And normally I would never buy it fading like this, but I then remember looking at the daily chart when it faded again on September. Again, why is it 10th or 9th? Why am I losing my mind? September 10th. On the 10th here, right, it pulls back on this red day, but it actually holds the trend line, and it's holding the 20 and the 10. So even though it looks really weak and closing right at those levels, I thought to myself, the odds may be super low, But I'm like, from a risk reward perspective, this is like, it's still working. Like it's still exactly where it could be at any given moment in time. And if in the event it holds this, like, man, my risk reward is going to be so awesome. And again, low odds, but that's what swing trading is. And so crazy enough, I rebought it. Now, do I love rebuying at the high of this bounce? No. Would have loved to have bought in, 740 instead of 750, 755. But man, was that idea spot on? Because then the next day it gaps up, runs, consolidates for 2 days, and then it just really goes. And, had I not rebought there, I mean, I probably would have tried to have found an entry here, but it just obviously wouldn't have been as good. And so I remember trimming some. Again, that's the entry. Trim some at like 850. So I ended up locking in profits to negate the first loss of when I got stuffed in the morning. And then I sold some sub 10, which was on the 29th of September. So that wasn't up until here, right? Then it kind of had this another trend along the highs. Unfortunately, I did not rebuy any here. I kind of, again, hindsight, wish I did, because it ended up going even further. But now I'm risking the rest on the 20. Now you might ask, why do you use the 20 on this one but not on the others? I kind of still pick and choose. But the only main reason here is that sometimes I'll look at previous runs, and if there was any kind of fake out under the 10 to only continue and the 20 isn't that far behind, I will try to use half the 10, half the 20. And that's kind of, this was the inspiration for that, because like it closed below the 10 multiple times here. But if you use the 20, I mean, you really caught this move much, much higher. So, sold half I had left on the 20 or on the 10, risking the rest on the 20. Got to see it go all the way up to as high as 16, but then unfortunately by October 17th, it did close below the 10 or below the 20, a little bit higher than where I had the 10. So made a little extra money, but again, same thing here. Gave a lot back from seeing it at 16, one day, and then 2 days later I'm stopping out at 12. Big difference to the unrealized profits of that swing trade left. And so now it's holding up again. So again, we'll find out in the coming months how this worked out. It'd be sick if this goes higher. Hopefully it'll be another big winner for me, but we'll never know until time tells. So, but yeah, that's the 10 close, and then the 20 close here, high 11s. So I locked in total 57K on that one. And then one of the bigger trades of the month, actually I tied. I had two biggest trades on the swing side. Iron and LEU, but we'll go over Iron here. LEU is later in the video. Again, this is with HIVE, a Hive on the data center sector. This one's pretty interesting though, because I could have easily missed this one. And in fact, originally to start, I did. I was long this. Again, we zoom in to really get a good idea. It's run so much. It's an incredible run. What day was it? It had to have been, originally was mid-August. I think it was this day when it started really pushing over the 19s area. Caught it for a few days, but then I remember also the market being really weak. It was either a tariff headline or there was some kind of shakeout happening, or some of the Fed, something happened where the overall markets got pretty weak pretty quickly. And so I got stopped out on this day. And I actually think I didn't stop out from a stop loss. I sold prematurely for like break even, just thinking like, hey, let's protect ourselves. Like I'm not up that much. And I kind of took a estimated guess that like, hey, the overall market right now is not good. Like the chance of me stopping out is extremely high. And that it was the case. So I saved myself some money, because the next day it definitely would have wicked me out on this day had I not stopped out here. The problem is I didn't watch it close enough to rebuy, because going back over 20 or going back over 21, really started to work, and I just didn't watch it closely enough. And so, lo and behold, then they post earnings. It gaps up from 23 all the way up to 27, 28. And now I have massive FOMO. I'm like, damn it, Kyle, like you should be long from like 20 or 21. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you need to watch these closer. And thankfully that whipped me in the shape, because now I was watching Iron like a hawk. I mean, every single day I was watching this thing just to see if it could give me an entry. And ultimately it came to my conclusion of like, hey, by by day 5 here, day 5 and 6, when it kept holding the earnings low, right? So the first day it puts in a low of like 25.60. Next day it gaps down, but immediately strong move back, and the low is like 25.50. And then on these 2 days, on September 5th and 8th, so a Friday and a Monday, kept trying to go lower, but then kept just small bounces back. But what really made me pull the trigger was that this did the same thing, bounced back, but then this is the first time it touched the 10 and immediately recovered. And so for me, it's like, hey, this had a really good time surfing the 10 in the previous runs. Not entirely, right? Using the 20 in some cases would have been good. But for me, when it tapped the 10, immediately came back, holding the earnings low, the support level, I thought to myself, again, very similar to AMPX, like win rate, no idea. Could be a 10% chance. But risk reward wise, for me to buy, 26s, risking 25s, like $1 a share at most, like risk reward's incredible here. And so I bought some. Next day it gaps up, goes higher, and I think it was gapping up because I think it was either Nubis or Oracle, some other company in the data center sector had good earnings, good news, something. So the whole sector immediately got strength and another second went higher. And the rest was history, right? So huge 2 moves up. I remember trimming some at like 33 on this day. And then again, it just keeps on going. I remember trimming some. My last trim was here into 48. At this point, at the moment in time, I thought, man, this is getting pretty overdone, parabolic. Let me just take a little bit off. Because I remember at this point, the 10 was like, almost $10 a share lower. So I was like, man, do I really want to give that much back in the event this is the top? So I sold a little bit more. I think I still had half left by this point. So again, still within the realms of how much I wanted to hold on to. But no, just kept on going. Just kept going. Ended up going to high as like 75. And then I sold under the 10 in the 60s here, or in 61, 60 range. And again, didn't decide to risk the 20 because I thought to myself, again, this is such a big run. And selling off under the 10 when the 20 is still another, $5 a share lower, I thought to myself, let's just lock it in. So I ended up locking 138K there. Easily like a 25-1 risk to reward. I mean, I wasn't even risking... I was risking like barely 6K. I bought 6K shares risking $1. So to make nearly 140 grand off a 6K risk, I mean, I have never had a trade like that ever. Like that level of risk reward. So just really, really awesome to see. Still holding up. So I'd love to get another wind out of this. I mean, I don't think it's going to go, 400%, but any move higher would be legendary. So yeah, that was swings. Again, let's go back to the day trades real quick. Gold, UGL. Really wasn't watching gold at all. Could care less until I had to start caring. And just got a little bit overdone. Again, GLD, right? GLD, just an insane move. Like again, a $20 trillion asset going to $30 trillion. It's just the strength was incredible here. And so once it started getting a bunch of green days in a row, again, very similar to small caps. Like it's not just a small cap thing, even though it happens a lot in small caps. Like any asset can go parabolic and kind of create this miniature bubble look. I'm not calling gold a bubble by any means, but like you get overdone enough. Any asset can look pretty appealing to a short seller, right? And so once we were doing that, I thought to myself, yeah, like it's worth a try now. And so I'm happy I was as patient as I was. And gold is a pretty slow mover, but UGL is the 2x leverage of gold. And so I actually shorted this. I shorted, again, on the 17th of October. All right, if we go into it, pretty straightforward red day. I was not expecting gold to have this easy of a move because, again, something like gold in a commodity that I don't even trade, I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, let's be prepared for a massive headache. It was kind of where my head was going into the today. But it made this fairly easy. Tried to go higher in after hours, clearly not calling those gains by pre-market, but still a slight gap up. But for me, this pre-market low of 56 for UGL was enough for me to say, hey, if we're going to make another low pre-market and then be red on the day after kind of having this parabolic run, I'm like, that's probably my full confirmation entry. And again, I'll just have to risk whatever the high of day is. And if it stops me out, so be it. Like, I just have to kind of like let Jesus take the wheel in the sense. Like, let price action take the wheel. Like, just trust it. And so that's what I did. That's exactly what I did. USAR, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, sorry, I keep forgetting. I'm getting bad now. Iron. Does that buy at mid 26s or low 26s, risking about $1 a share, right? This is the trim at 33. And then this is the trim up in 49 when it was getting parabolic, like I mentioned. And then this is the trim on the 10. So there we go. Where is... Gosh, it's going to bug me now. USAR we're going to talk about in a second. BYND. Maybe I don't have the picture. Do I not have the picture? Maybe I don't. That sucks. That's annoying. But anyways, I'm getting short in this move, right? I'm literally shorting, like I'm starting in, I think like 56s, adding full size sub 56 or add 56. Didn't cover this pull because this is not, I mean, going 50 cents is cool, but like I was expecting, the game plan was I think gold can go down 2 to 3%. And again, UGL being 2x, we should see 4 to 6%. I think at 55 it was only down like 1 point something or just barely at 2%. So I was like, no, we can have another leg lower. So I remember it bouncing, staying stick to my risk level of high of 57. Thankfully, I think VWAP at the time was like right here. So it rejected VWAP, gave another move lower. Remember covering, I don't remember exactly where I covered, but I definitely covered some close to 55, if not under 55. I'm 90% positive I waited for this move lower. I think at this point I used like a 5 or 15 minute trailing stop of like the next 15-minute high it breaks. If it breaks those last 15-minute highs, because I had no idea how low we're going to go, but at this point we're getting low enough to where like I shouldn't be greedy and should be thinking about trailing, because the last thing I want to do is have this bounce back to 55 plus and like regret covering it. So I'm pretty sure either this bounce or this bounce, I covered the rest and I locked in 43K. So pretty big size for such a small price move, but again, you have to anticipate that. Like if you're a small cap short seller and you go into shorting gold thinking gold's going to be down 15% on the day, like you're clueless. You have to be, you have to know what you're trading. And so thinking gold was going to go down 2 or 3% was pretty spot on there. So I'm happy with how I traded that. And again, I haven't touched it since. So I'm, in terms of getting, putting my foot in the water and dipping it right back out, couldn't have been happier with gold there, because next day it goes higher, next day gaps down. Would have never chased that gap down, even though it did go lower. But that was really cool to see there. So yeah, that was, again, I keep mentioning it, but I keep forgetting USAR. So USAR, again, another contributor to that huge week. Again, back to UAMY, this was one of them, right? That was in the mineral mining material sector. And so, I mean, this breakout here, I'm going to zoom out, right? It's been months in the making. And so when it broke out, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better, I mean, it's one thing if it just goes straight up into it. So it's like you have to be willing to chase, which I wouldn't have been. But the fact that this grinded up against the 10, gave you many days of consolidation. I mean, it was right underneath it to where this was such a good buy, in my opinion, such a good breakout, because it just goes straight up, right? And so USAR, again, did I get rid of them here? Yeah, USAR. And I almost missed it, guys. I remember I either was late to my office for some reason. Something happened where I was not watching for the first 30 minutes. And so then when I see it go, I'm like, oh crap, like I need to buy this. And I got this little 5-minute dip here, which was my saving grace, because it actually never technically went lower. It got close here. But I mean, after that, I mean, it's just off to the races. So it was up a ton already by the first day. Then news of like the U.S. government kind of making partnerships either directly with USAR or with the sector, one of the companies in the sector in general. I forget specifically, but obviously that made this thing go even higher. And then the next day, right? Oh, here it is. That's why it's hiding. UGL. Sorry, guys. There we go. Right, so adding, I did cover some. I did lock some in. Interesting. I don't remember doing that. And I don't remember adding. I probably just added back what I covered here, if I had to guess. Or I added, and I used now, because I mentioned that earlier, it failed VWAP very nicely. So maybe I added and then moved risk to VWAP, even though it's a little tight, but thinking like, hey, if it's going to work, it should go. And then, yeah, covering some there. Yep, and then using that, 5 or 15 minute kind of stop and then stop the rest out right there. So 43K, there it is. I was like positive I took a picture. I lose my mind. So then back to USAR, first trim at 29. I mean, I didn't expect to trim the top that day, but that's what happened. All right, what day was that? That was the 6th of October. So 6th, where's 6th? Yeah, this day. So I was 3 days in. 3 days in, I wanted to do my first trim. Ended up going higher, obviously. I don't think I ever trimmed again, which I regret immensely, because obviously, yeah. So I trimmed to 29, and then I never trimmed again. And then what do you know? I end up selling the rest at 29 by the close. So again, back to what I was talking about with giving so much back on the swings. I mean, oh my God, I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it. But like I mean, we were up at 44 guys, 40 freaking 4, and it just goes straight down over 3 days to stop me out at 29 under the 10. Like, I mean, just looking, like doing the math, like 50%. Like I'm selling at 30. I was 50% higher 3 days ago. Like the amount of money, like I just, I don't know why I didn't think about trimming. I think it was because this was so erratic where, and again, it has these red candles or these red days only to keep going. So like, even though it was like having big wicks to the upside, but then kept going higher, I was like, screw it. Like, who knows how high it goes? Like, it may look weak, but screw it. It just keeps putting in, topping looking candles and keeps going higher. Like, let it ride, which again, what I should do. But I did have a little bit left to trim. And typically, you might be asking like, Kyle, you should only trim once. And, some of you might only want to trim as little as possible. But in my brain, what I usually do is I like to trim 30%. And then I leave 20% to trim more if it does go parabolic and makes me uneasy. So that way, no matter what, I'm still going to keep half of my position left for the true trail of the SMAs. But, selling a third at 29, which is what I did, and not thinking about selling that 20% into a move to, 40, which is just nuts. Like, 100% in a week and a half. Like, I'm trying to figure out why on earth I didn't. Again, I'm telling you, like, I had over too much confidence. Like, hey, it might look like it's topping, but who cares? It could just go higher. But who cares if I think it's topping? Like in terms of just it parabolicking, like that should have been enough to be like, hey, let's trim a little. And maybe I did. I don't remember. I'm looking at this. I'm like, I can't believe I wouldn't have trimmed. That doesn't make sense to me. But either way, whether I trim, even if relevant if I trimmed, going on a tangent. Sorry, even if I did trim. Just have it's then unfortunately the poison of the game, like having 50% of my position left and then having to watch it drop this hard in 3 days, like is never fun. I don't remember how much I was up, but I gave probably 6 figures up in gains this quickly going back down. So locked in 96K in total, so still an incredible gain. But I mean, we could do the math, right? If I took this from like 20 to pretty much, let's call it 20 to 30. And that was 90. Yeah, that was 90K in gains. That's where I'm trimming and selling. Like, again, another $10 a share was like 200, and 44 was like probably 250. So, God, just, anyways, I'm gonna be here forever. I gotta keep going. But, yeah, painful. Okay, that was all this week. Now we're getting this week. I'm already at 48 minutes, so 47 minutes. We're gonna talk a lot about BYND. BYND. Was obviously the biggest opportunity for day traders this month, in my opinion. For those who short sell, like this was big. This was huge. This reminds me of FFIE or FFAI from last year. And then for those who watched that video that I did on that one, that was my biggest loss of my career. Still is, because I just was overly aggressive way too early and just broke every rule in the book, right? BYND I'm much happier about, because if there was one that I could have stumbled back down into that deathward spiral of what FFIE was for me, BYND could have absolutely been that. And so I followed my risk level. I followed my risk management. Did I push the limits? Absolutely. Did I get very close to the limits? Absolutely. But I didn't lose control. I didn't get, go off the rails, which I'm very, very happy about. The problem is, and what you'll see when we go over the trades, me pushing that limit and not timing it that well resulted in me losing a lot and then making it all back plus some. So I ended up greening this ticker by 6 figures easily. But in a world where I just get the timing a little bit better and not losing so much, like I have no problem losing on the front side, that's fine. But losing pretty much almost my max to then having to try it again, there's a more efficient way I could have done it, and it would have been much better had I done it. And so we'll talk about that. So going in on the 21st, we'll just get into the full, not the 2 months, we got the 1 month. It's really funny. Again, I have so much to say. I don't want to go for it. My throat's already hurting, but I find it so funny that this was the one to go. So for background, most people don't know this because I don't really care to share it, but I'll share it because it's relevant to this story, is I'm vegetarian. So from eating fake meat, which I will typically do, I've had Beyond Meat. I've had it. It's not that good, guys. It's not that good. You're not missing out much. there's many other way more better and way more healthier fake meats out there. Why BYND has gotten the hype, and I say this because when I do tell people I'm vegetarian, if people ever ask, I usually only tell people if they ask. Obviously, this video is counterintuitive to that, but context of the story here. Fake meat's a very weird thing. Again, and it should be. It's not natural, right, in any way. Many of it can be very processed and unhealthy, which you have to look out for. But from the sentiment I get when I tell people, oh yeah, I've tried it, the first sentiment is like gross, which rightfully so. I don't disagree with you. So to see, it's just such a perfect example that no one cares what the company does. No one cares, ever. Ever. When a company is going parabolic and greed sets in for people, no one cares. Because I promise you, 95% of our population, if not, I don't know what the percentage is, probably it's easily 90% plus, are not vegetarian, are not eating fake meat. Probably 99%, who knows? But to get this level of attraction from a stock trader world, for it to go this big with this much volume, billions of shares a day, it's like all of a sudden overnight people were like, oh, BYND's awesome. And it's like, no, it isn't. like you don't know a thing about this company. You know what I mean? And again, it just shows like no one cares. But for me, I know it. It's not that great. I think they're going bankrupt. Don't need to hate on them. But for me actually having their product and do eat it, like when they do offer it, and it's the only option for me sometimes. Yeah, I'll have it. It's like the equivalent of me eating like a McDonald's cheeseburger. Both are terrible for you. So when I'm seeing this, I'm like, dude, I am bearish as could be. I don't care if I've had the product or eat it. Like this is awful. It's just so funny that people who don't do it but just want their greed shows how little they actually care or know about the company. But how it even got to this point, I don't even know. They restructured their debt, did something to say they're going to not go up bankrupt. Again, the fact that Wall Street Bets or whoever got a wind of this, more power to them. But I just... you can clearly tell it's very difficult for me to wrap my head around how the hell we got here. But with that being said, on to the trades. I digress. LEU will talk about it a bit. So here's BYND. Again, similar to Buru, this was a big gap up day. I don't want to go back on the daily chart for stocks trade, but let's do it on TradingView here. We're already running. We go from 50 cents up to 150, and then we make a huge gap up to $2 plus. And so in my head, I'm like, again, thinking what I just told you, like this is crap. No one should be caring about this. They're still super dilutive, even if they have restructured some shares and some debt. Like this should not be going much higher today on this big of a gap up. So I'm bearish out the open. I'm bearish here, so I get short. Originally, right idea. It does fade. But again, I'm getting short in the low to mid twos, so like 230, 220. And I'm thinking, again, this just gapped up from 150. Like this should easily sell off sub 2, if not 180, 170, maybe even 160, right? If we're doing the whole pull to red green idea, like we should get close, if not to it. And so it goes sub 2. I think the low is like 190, 193. Don't cover any. I think my first cover is like 180 something. So I don't cover anything. And then it just kind of zombies back. And so I cover some, I then try to get fancy, adding some back, covering it again, adding some back, covering again. All in all, by the time I'm done with this, I lose like upwards of 40 to 50 grand. Like way too much. I wanted to risk more, don't be wrong. I wanted to risk at least 20 to 30. But for this kind of setup for me, it's like this shouldn't have been close to that. I mean, now risking A plus for me is like risking 60, so I didn't risk full on A plus. But again, I lost double of what I really should have. So already right there, I'm kind of like, on the limits, but not losing control, just overly aggressive and overly greedy and not covering enough, right? So be it. Then we start going parabolic. And again, in my brain, okay, I've lost too much on the, call it gap and crap idea. But now this is a parabolic. So I have to kind of wipe my slate clean. I don't care if I lost on a gap and crap idea. This is now a entirely different setup. I have to give this another try with a whole new set of risk parameters, or just willing to go start from zero in my head, which good and bad, but could get dangerous, right? If you're not careful in terms of the overall loss, even if you do combine two setups in one kind of idea in a single trade. And so this was quite choppy, right? Can't really get anything going. I think I lose another 10 to 20 in this area. So now I'm trying to push like, okay, you lose another, you double this, you're going to max stop. Like you're getting there. This is what's going on in my head. Then a parabolic again. And this does it much more smoothly in after hours. And so I'm thinking to myself, you got to give it one more try. very happy with this. This was great. Shorted there, shorted the first, or then covered some, took that size right back, risking those highs of like 475, whatever it was, and then got a huge flush, covering some at 4, and then covering a lot down at 350, 340, 330. The problem is, and this is my biggest mistake here, is that I had maybe 25% of my position left. And I was thinking like, man, could it go 3? Could it go sub 3? Like just keeping a little piece left in case it got really ugly. The problem was, not the problem, but the counterintuitiveness here is that I was noticing where my P&L was. And had I covered it all, 340 would have made all of this back, right? So again, it's only in hindsight, but when I look back, I'm like, damn, that would have been pretty cool. Just cover it all, be green, and walk away. But no, because it faded so much or panicked so much, I'm thinking to myself, okay, now this is backside, right? This is the biggest pull it's had, in the entire run-up. This is going to pull back more. This might even gap down the next day. Let's see what happens. So we bounce. I reshort. I pretty much put all my size back on, thinking we're going to roll over back down to the mid-3s, if not 3. And that's just not what happens. We keep grinding higher. We keep going higher. And eventually by close of after hours, we are not going anywhere. We're consolidating beautifully at the highs. And I'm like, dude, you can't, you cannot be short this overnight. Like it's the total opposite of Buru, not even close to remote. I'm not up on the position. I'm not green on the ticker. Like everything about it could easily go higher. You need to cover. So I do cover it the last 10 minutes of after hours. All in all, unfortunately, again, for almost being break even to then giving it all back, I ended up being down 60 something grand on the day on this ticker. So it's almost as if lost 60K or 60, 70K total here, then made it all back and then gave it back down 60K again. So pretty volatile day here. Again, not out of the range of what I was willing to risk, but pushed it, got a bad start to where now this is going to be my risk tolerance for the day. It kind of just got me in a little too hot too quickly. But again, comparing it to FFIE where I was just stubbornly holding, never cutting anything and losing 400 grand, big difference. So felt much more in control even though it was aggressive. But yeah, so next day, right? Next day, you can tell what it goes. It gaps up massively, runs to as high as almost 9 in pre-market, right? We just keep going, right? We just blow off massively. And now, another mistake is that I did not wake up for this. I really wish I did. Again, I can't say how I would have traded it, but knowing how well I nailed this parabolic, I have to think even if I took some losses on the front side, I definitely would have been there shorting some of these lower highs here to get this pull from, call it mid-7 or 8 to 6 if I was perfect. I'm not going to be perfect, but 8 to 7, something like that, 7 to 6, something like that. Didn't wake up until, 5 p.m. or 5 a.m. my time, so 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. Eastern. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's the blow off. We have to try this thesis again, unfortunately. And so that's kind of what I did. Ellie, you just keep standing in the way here. Okay, that's one trade we're going to go over in a second. But so I'm starting in, scaling some, scalping some, made a few grand here, nothing crazy. And then it rolls over. Because the game plan for me was okay, this is strong. This can continue to be strong. Do I think it goes over 9? No, that's going to be the thesis. But I do think using this resistance in the 8 to 7 range is going to be key. I kept telling myself that, if you're going to risk something or you're going to get short somewhere, try to see if you can get short in this area. I mean, that's the whole reason why I got short pre-market here in the 7s. What really threw me off and what really had me pretty much throw that trade plan out the window was that by the open, it just flushed to 5. Immediately, it went from, hey, try to be patient for a 7+ entry to, okay, Kyle, you need to get in as much as you possibly can. And I didn't realize at the time. That trade plan went out the window, and then now FOMO was the driver of me wanting to be short this thing. So again, this was live stream. Again, this was also on a Wednesday, so you can watch the Clover Trading live streams on October 22nd on the playlist on the channel, and watch me short this. So it's I'm shorting. It gives me just enough confidence to think it's weak, right? It pulls, it comes back, it fails to squeeze, then goes again, and then it goes makes a bottom. Goes again. Normally in most cases, that small weak bounce and then lower, in a lot of cases should have just been the flush, right? And so you see me adding, you see me taking those shares and trying to short there. Ends up holding. Thankfully I cover some. Try to short again, right? Makes a lower high. So I'm okay, this is it. Not it. Keeps going. And unfortunately, the whole time it's creating lower highs, but it's also creating higher lows. So it was too biased on the short side to really see that, hey, it's still 50-50 in both directions. And so once it kept going, okay, that was the time where I cut. Unfortunately, I did have a little bit left risking off of this high of 730. And so then I cut that there up here. So at this point, I'm risking much more than I risked the day before. So at this point, I'm roughly down 80, 90K. Like I'm down, I'm taking A+. I'm trying to do A+ here. I'm trying to push it. And so what goes in my head, I'm like, hey, Kyle, you can try again, but if you try again and lose another, 20, 30K, you're hitting your max stop. You have to be mentally prepared. Like, hey, if you do stop out again, like you're locking out, like you're done. You're right. Because that's what I didn't do in FFIE, and that hurt me very massively. So I was much more aware here. And that's scary because I'm like, I already had FOMO here. Stopping out again and then locking me out would have been I would want to rip my hair out, right? Like if in the hypothetical world I stop out again and then it dies later and I can't beat it because I'm locked out, like I would have lost my marbles. So I'm very hesitant to reshort here. In fact, I short like 5 to 10% of what I had, just to give me enough room off of 9 of like, okay, 9 is still that all-time level. Like now, and actually when I finally covered here, I know only like 2 minutes passed. Like this is only like a 2-minute window for me covering and then reshorting. But once I was able to cover, I had the, like my mind blanked in the sense that like I had a clear head. I was able to think clearly now. And all of a sudden that original thesis that I had that went out the window when I had FOMO, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wait a minute. Like this is that level. This is the 7 to 8 level of these resistance levels that if you wanted to get short at a good spot, this is it. That's the spot. But again, I'm also thinking in my head, like I said, you can't afford to stop out again. You have to be right, because if you stop out again, you're done, and then you're probably going to miss it. So even though I am reshorting, because I'm thinking in my head, this is the actual spot, I'm shorting a fraction of what I had. And then it starts going lower. And so I'm adding more. I'm like, okay, now at this point, I don't love it yet, but risking, this high might be doable. Because now I'm going from, okay, it's working in my favor. And now it's almost as if like as the trade went on, the aggression continued, but then so did the willingness to stop out and be like, hey, this is it. Like I gotta be okay stopping out and just missing it. Like over time, the acceptance started to hit me. And so now I'm adding more size, kind of moving my wrist down to this point to like this move. And then when it goes below VWAP and new lower low, I add more, moving my wrist to like this high of 7. And so that's the only way I was able to risk not as much as I risked here, unfortunately. If I risked 90K, if I had like a bigger max stop and risked 90K again, this would have been massive. And that's kind of part of the inefficiency I was referring to going into BYND, which is like, had I just not lost this much and it was just a little bit better on the timing and the risk management, like I could have risked so much more here, guys. And the only reason why I was able to really push size but still keep it at risk level is that I was trailing. So it's like, move my wrist there, then I move my wrist there, then I added on this bounce high, but then I had like almost all my risk, or at least on all the ads on this bounce high. So it's like once we started rolling, I was like, we either roll for good, or if we come over this bounce high, like I'm cutting it. Like I kept pyramiding in with tighter risk to be able to get the size I wanted, without overdoing it from a risk perspective, given I was already down, too much or a little bit more than I wanted to be in terms of what I was going into the day. But that was that right. Finally, once it started making a lower low, right? It's like higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. And then finally, like that was it. And then another lower low. And then the rest was history. Started halting down, multiple halts down. Again, doesn't shock me, right? That this first bounced right around the red green mark. And so when it bounced is when I covered a lot, right? It was pretty much all covered by that point from the 5 to 4 range. Did bounce, thought this bounce was going to go 5+. It didn't. So when we rolled over again, I shorted a little bit more, like maybe 40% or half size of what I had. So I immediately started covering there because I already knew this was pretty oversold. But again, one of those ones where you think red green might hold, and it did, but then it doesn't. And then it actually does go and actually did close red on the day and couldn't even bounce, higher than this first bounce attempt in the, 450, 470 range. So made it all back. Again, it's between that one and then, where was it? I got rid of it, didn't I? So there's this one, Yeah, and then this was at another broker, with all the numbers I'm saying is all of them combined, right? So I took this loss much more quickly, so it wasn't nearly as much part of that 90K or so, 80, 90K, but was a part of it, was a factor. But then same idea, just got short a little bit less than I did, and then covered it there for another gain. So all in all, after all the trades, the losses and the gains on this just specific day, not including the day before where I lost like 60, where am I looking at? 160K. So I was like almost down, let's call it 90, to then be up 160. I made a $250,000 on this actual red day move, which is good. It makes me feel good that I was able to push size like that. Again, but hopefully you understand that the kind of the hammer on the nail, or the nail on the hammer I'm trying to speak about, which is like, hey, had I just managed this side a little bit better, I did not have so much FOMO and actually waited and saved some size to get short up here and do it more aggressively. I mean, one, I would have lost less, but then two, I would have been able to use that money I lost less to be risk for the second trade, and wouldn't have had to maybe pyramid as aggressively, because there's a world like this could have just bounced one more time. And I really, the only reason why I worked in my brain is because I was willing to give away the sense of FOMO and willing to push it and hit the max, right? And if I wasn't in that position, I mean, I could have been so much bigger, right? This could have been, forget $250,000, let's call it $500,000. I'll never be able to do the math of how much it actually would have been, but like this had that opportunity written all over it. So I'm learning. I'm much better than FFIE, so I'm very happy about that. But there's improvement, right? There's things to get better at for sure. So yeah. Wow, we are just going. We have at least another 15 minutes. So some of you guys like it, some of you guys don't. Feel free to take a break, pause it. I don't know. Get a glass of slow water. I'll do that. And so that was that day. That was what? The 22nd here, right? And so this day should have been much bigger. Well, actually it was. There was a lot of losses here and a lot of gains here. So the biggest gain was obviously BYND. Another huge gain was LEU. LEU is my sweet baby child of swing trade because I just love this thing so much. The only reason why this was big, though, was that I was able to kind of get two positions in one. So it had me have a pretty fairly larger size than I'm normally taking with swing trades, mainly because there were two entries here. So the first entry, and it's funny, I actually made this, I think, at the end of September recap talking about the previous swing I had and a couple losses I took in September on it, or one or two. I think just one. I think it was just this one where I tried to buy earnings and lost. But lo and behold, a couple days later, it pops over this left side peak. It's holding the 10 and 20. It's making now higher highs. I gave it a starter here. On the 9th of September, I bought some. I was like, yep, this looks good. This is worth trying. Grinds up, tops out, kind of tops out perfectly with these previous highs. So I draw another line. I'm like, dude, if it breaks over these 440 or 240s, this is going to look like a perfect breakout again. So what do you know? 2 days of pullback, taps the 10, holds, comes back, breaks again. So then I buy some more. So at this point now my average is like 227. All my risk is on the low of day of 232. So I'm already pretty much locking in a profit based on my new risk level. And it just skyrockets. I mean, it went up so perfectly and so strongly. I remember trimming some. I short trimmed 30% at 280, and then I didn't trim at all. I said I had uber confidence. I was like, this is going to go so much higher. Arguably trimming at 280 was too soon, but I needed to lock some in given how big my position was. And so I locked some 280 and I just let it ride. Just kept going and going and going. But again, similar to the theme of the swings here, it's like, okay, I had 60% of my position left at 450, was up a ton, was up definitely more than my biggest swing trade ever. Was easily up over 200 grand, something like that. And then we die, right? Go from 250 all the way down to 380. I sell, my another third at 380, locks them in. Okay, great. Doesn't really move much. And then this one hurt, guys. This one really hurt. I mean, it's one thing to go into the 20 and just stop out below the 20 like I would have here. But I mean, we're down. We go from 370 to we almost drop $100 a share. And so I have a third of my position left, which, I'm glad I've locked in 2/3 now. But man, like still giving back like $80 to $70 a share on even a third of your position left after already being, $150 a share off the highs. Like I get a lot back. So ultimately I ended up selling it on way below the 20, which sucks. Locked in 138K, so very tied with Iron for the biggest swing trade of the month. But again, God, we were up a lot. We were up a lot up there. It's not painful. It's okay. But yeah, so again, between BYND and Iron or LEU here, it's like I had a massive day on the gain side. The problem is I also then took like 50K plus in losers on other swing trades. So I'm not going to go in the charts because again, I'm going to speed round here, but PRME, I longed it somewhere in here, took a loss. NTLA had a long from this day, took a loss. RR, I bought way too prematurely. I massively regret this buy. Just was kind of out of FOMO. Where was it? I think it was buying somewhere up here. Took a loss. Or no, maybe it was this. I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere here. I took another 5-figure loss there. SYM, same idea. Right, if we load 20, maybe it was this move. One of these moves. Took a loss. So those 4 right there, I mean, another 50, 60K in losses. So it was just a very volatile day, right? A lot of gains, a lot of losses, tons, everywhere, all the time. So that was that. Last week, we'll keep moving with BYND. BYND, the great part about this is that, well, positive and negatively, after all this happened, I just spoke to you about 5-10 minutes ago, I'm thinking in my head, okay, I've managed it well, much better than FFIE. I've locked in now profits. Now I'm thinking, can we get a bounce to really push it? Can we get a bounce back to 455 in the coming days to really get short, have it not break these highs probably ever again, and then really catch a move? Unfortunately, it just doesn't happen, right? Next day, it bounces high as 360s, 370. Can't even get close to the bounce highs of the day before. Then we give it all back. Next day, try to pop, and we die again. At this point, I'm now looking at all of these lows of, it's almost like an uptrending chart, right? It's almost like I don't think I have time to draw a line, but if I could draw one, where's my lines? Where do I draw? Is that it? Yeah, line. Here we go. It's like if I could draw, we are clearly just not, eventually it's like if we can't bounce like everyone thinks, like I thought, at some point there's going to be no bounce and we're just going to go lower. Again, we're still up from 50 cents and we're at $3. Like even though it's very oversold off the highs, it's not necessarily oversold off the lows. And so I end up getting short. Again, here's the trim LEU. That's the chart that kept popping up. Here's the first buy in 211s. There's the ad at 240s. Here's the 10-minute sell at 380 or 10 SMA. And then here's I actually sold this. I couldn't take the pain. Unfortunately, I wish I would have held to the close because it would have made me some money, extra money, but I couldn't take it anymore. When we broke 300, I was like, I can't give any more back. I lost my marbles on this one, just watching it just bleed and giving back so much money that it was so below the 20. I mean, the 20 again was at the opening price. So to watch it just get obliterated was not fun. Okay, so here's BYND. So I started thinking about the anticipation of like, hey, it hasn't broken that trend line, so to speak, even though I'm not really entering because of the trend line. But I was like, there's a breakdown here after failing out the open again. Thinking if it doesn't bounce, like let's start getting short. So shorting this bounce, shorting new low day, shorting near towards red green, and then the rest is just letting it play out. So we just keep fading. We keep going. Finally, by after hours, we get just above $2. $2 was my profit target, but I was thinking like $2 minimum. So like really like a sub 2 sell-off was pretty expected in my brain. So, but I didn't want to hold it all overnight. So I did cover like 25% at like 205 there. Held the rest overnight. Next morning, we do gap down and sell off sub 2. Do cover some of the 190s. Was trying to get being a little bit greedy for like 180s. Didn't happen. So I covered over the new high day. I dodged these bounces, but had it actually had some more patience, would have gotten those covers. So there's that one. I locked in 94K on that one, which was great. That's where you see this right there. Lost somewhere else on something, but good start to the week. That's the only reason why I'm probably green, because I just gave a lot of my money back. Some of the losses I gave my money back on, specifically 40 grand alone, was CMBM. And this is super frustrating because, I mean, you look at the daily chart like this, I should have been all over this. It's literally the theme of what we've been talking about. Like huge gap up, huge run, huge gap up. Like this fading doesn't shock me in the slightest, but I found a way to screw up Not necessarily this day. This day just got me for a good loss. And this day I found a way to screw up. So on the first day was a gap and grab idea. That idea didn't work. What's frustrating about it though, and why I lost 20 grand, even though I only wanted to lose 14, but I lost 20, was because of course my stop out price was 280. And so right here, let me zoom in real close for you guys. We halt up at 279. So my stop is 1 penny from this halt up. Should I have just covered it? Yes. But am I just trusting a stop loss and letting the stop take me out? Also yes. Problem is, all of these halts it's had like at least a few halts leading up into this day so far. And every single time it's halted, it's never really gapped up or down that much. I mean, maybe this first one on this first gap down on the halt down, but other than that, every other halt up or down it's opening relatively 5 to 10 cents, nothing crazy. Of course, the one halt that I don't need to do that, I don't need to halt up, it halts up 40 cents. It goes from 280 to 310, 320. So yeah, there's about a 30% more in slippage because of that. Not fun by any means, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But it was just annoying. Like of all gap ups after a halt, like it's the one I need to stop out on. Like really. So I stop out there, take 20K loser, never touch it again. It is what it is. Next day, and actually I probably have the chart there. Yeah, get short and had a wide risk, but of course that risk got 30% plus in size. Lost 20K. Okay. Next one. We fade beautifully, but do I trade it well? Absolutely not. And honestly, it's unfortunate because I didn't see it until after the fact. Very similar to BYND. Very similar, right? BYND had a parabolic move in pre-market. It's faded off. It had a spike or a grind up, let's say, into those resistance levels, failed. Then the real move came, right? Move up to nearly $8 or high sevens. Chopped everyone around, pushed into the previous, not just the pre-market, but also actually after hours resistance in the mid sixes, high sixes. Then it dies, and then you get a bounceless fade all day long, and even into the next day. Didn't recognize it that way, just didn't see it that way. Had a terrible trade plan because of it, right? Getting short on new low a day, covering new high a day, getting short on not a new lower day, but just something I thought was just weak, covering again into new high a day. Ultimately, I'm like, okay, no, we're just going to give up. Then I see it die. So that was my mistake of like not willing to give it another try when time was right, because I remember watching it here, but already mentally kind of just saying, screw this ticker. This ticker sucks. Where, getting short, again, very similar to BYND, like waiting till an actual truly lower low, like a big one, getting short here in this move would have been fine, right? My risk score wouldn't have been great, but it would have been better than me trying to do this. I'm like shorting in this random chop. It pops for a minute, a second, and I just randomly cover it, only to then see it just still chop. But if you wait an hour, you're literally then up, and then you get to catch a huge fade from 5 to 350. Like, I whiffed this thing so hard because I, again, lost another 20 grand on this day. Thankfully I only lost like, call it 6 or 7 grand a try. So less than my 1R, but like this should have been a 30, 40, 50K gain. It should have been the whole opposite direction. So that's frustrating. That sucks. That was a big contributor to, that and some other swing losses that, again, we could speed around if we wanted to. But again, we've been going long enough. So barely green by the end of the week, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, this week just was kind of telling me like, you've had a good week time or good month time to kick yourself out on your way out. And let's move on to November. So yeah, that's the month. No idea how good November is going to be. I generally don't have expectations. I might have ideas or theses or rough expectations, but again, what the price action gives me, what the opportunity gives me is what we're going to actually get, and that's where I'd like to react and then go on from there. So the year is almost over. We got 2 months left. I'm already, knock on wood, am at an all-time new best year already. My previous best year is 2.1. We're at 2.4, so it's only 300K above. I could easily whiff it. I could easily have a really bad month on any one of these. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't really care either way. It's a great month or great year in general. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. If you even made it this far, thank you. Appreciate it. Did not expect to go this long. I knew I had a lot of trades, but definitely a new longest video. My throat hurts. I don't want to do anymore. I'm trying to keep it under an hour going forward. But anyway, guys, thank you guys so much. Like, subscribe, and we will see you guys next video. Bye.